that has been phenomenally helpful.
In terms of the sync.
Yep, because it's like going back old school days. Doing things,
of course,
the old school way.
The craft of it.
Yeah, synchronizing multi-cam videos and stuff.
Yeah.
Although at least this time it's not with DV tapes, so
Right.
I can at least, I'm pleased about that.
Yeah. Well, welcome to summer. We're both dressed for summer. We're in a room where we're sweating buckets, proving that it's summer.
My iced coffee is there's a lot of condensation on the outside, and I'm like, so do I, because it is like we were both gone. I spent basically several weeks in Michigan, where it was hot, humid. Enjoyed it though, because the temperatures weren't that bad. Came back to Arizona, boiling hot, and now it's humid again. So I'm like, what is going on here? Like,
it's following you around.
I thought we were supposed to trade that, right? It's a dry heat, they say.
No, not this time of year.
My goodness.
Monsoon season.
My goodness. But yeah, it's so fun to be back in the studio, except for the temperature.
Right.
It's like, we need to get some fans, going in here. But this is tremendously fun. And I think also, I was thinking too, one, we can have like kind of a potpourri day, a kind of a grab bag.
Yep.
But also, I'm going to try to live my fantasy of having this be the longest cold open of just the show.
Oh, no.
Because I'm like, why not? If we have a potpourri episode.
I can hear listeners dropping like flies already.
Actually, it's funny. I hear the subscribe button getting clicked multiple times. This will just be a lot of fun. And I think also for us, because it is summer, a good opportunity to take the next couple of episodes kind of here and there and just kind of explore the fun stuff that we don't get time to, or that kind of live in our minds of like, oh, I want to talk about that thing.
This is Modem Futura in July.
That's right. The July edition, the summer vibes hot edition.
Yes.
Candy by the pool or wherever you spend your time. I don't know. It's like, although I have to say it's funny. I've gotten to an age now, and also living out in Arizona, when I go to the pool, I wear more clothes when I go to the pool than I did ever going off. Now, when it's like, it's time to go to the beach, I'm like, yes, I need my long sleeve sun shirt. Like,
so the trick actually is not being in the sun.
That's it. Right. Going to the place, going to the water, enjoying it, and never, ever having the sun rays touch your skin.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yep. So the irony here is, I've just got back from 3 weeks in the UK.
Yeah.
I get more sunburned in the UK than I ever do in Arizona, because in Arizona, I avoid the sun like the plague, and I forget when I go back to the UK.
I feel like that's very true. I'll say it here, so it's on record. I have not once had a sunburn while living in Arizona. Mm-hmm. But same was true back, I remember living in the Netherlands. Some of the worst sunburns I had was on King's Day. Right. Because you're on a canal, you're on a boat. I have no hair, didn't have a hat. And all of a sudden you were like, oh my God, like my skin is on fire. It's like, because it's cloudy, you don't think about it. You forget about it, right?
Yes.
But also our kids, as all kids do, I think, squirm and fight to have sunscreen put on. And I'm like,
sorry, to actually have it put on?
Yes.
They like it?
No, they hate it.
Oh, I was going to say, yes.
They hate it. And I'm sitting, and every time I'm like, you guys don't know. Like, you just appreciate, like, you kids have never once had a sunburn, because they lived almost their whole lives here in Arizona. Yep. And so it's the same thing. We just hide from the sun. It's crazy.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy. All right, what do you say we just crack this thing open? Should we officially get going? I want to do the whole thing as a cold open, and I'll pretend it's a cold open for the whole time.
but we'll just slip that intro in anyway.
Right. It'll have the energy of a cold open for for the whole show.
You got it.
All right.
Initializing waveform.
Modulating signals for transmission.
Exploring the possible, probable, and preferable futures.
Welcome to Modem Futura. Welcome to Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like, what does it mean to be human in the future? And also exploring whatever other questions we want to, because it's summertime.
Right, yes.
And we can do that because, like I said, it's hot. I'm already sweating. We're experimenting with a lot of spatial video capture. We've got an even more complex setup.
3 cameras now. 1, 2, 3.
It's like camera 1, camera 2, and camera 3.
All in Spatial for the 5 people around the world that actually watch podcasts in their Apple Vision Pros.
I know. And I'm curious. I'm guessing it's probably like not 0.01% or something like, but it's cool. And we're really, and I think one thing that's fun, and I think we've talked about it before, and I think this should be one of our summer episodes. We'll do a behind the scenes thing too. Cause I know some people don't care. Some people are like, whatever. And a lot of people are somewhere on the fence between like, what are you doing? And I want to know how to do that.
Sure.
But it's cool because I think the other piece to share is, obviously, people in my personal life and professional life, when you talk to me, I get really excited about technology.
We've sort of noticed.
It might compel you to create a podcast and do all this kind of stuff. But I think what is fun about this is to be able to show exactly what it looks like when you're experimenting on the fringe of a new technology, right?
Yes. Yep.
This is spatial sort of video capture especially is not a mainstream thing, although it certainly will be after Modem Futura. But
of course, I'm sort of trailblazing here. But here's the thing. I mean, so the Apple Vision Pro came out, last year now? It's a little over 12
year and a half.
months.
It was a February launch, I think, right? Yeah.
Of course, an incredibly niche product. But now you're seeing multiple companies developing lighter versions of either extended reality or immersive reality or virtual reality. And so now you've got Meta with the Ray-Ban glasses. You've got Apple rumored to be coming out with glasses in a couple of years. Apple rumored to be coming out with a much lighter headset. Other companies investing. There is a feeling in the air that over the next 3 to 5 years, immersive environments are going to be the thing. And of course, when people get these headsets and they're going to look for
desperate for content.
Modem Futura.
Right here. We've been waiting. Welcome. We've been waiting for you.
Right.
No, I think that's a good point because the Apple Vision Pro, and again, I think that's another great summer episode for us to do is to kind of go into like how we're using them.
Right. Yes,
But also, it's a category of a product that I think has also gotten a lot of criticism.
It has.
And you can depending on your personal perspective and what lens you're criticizing it, I think you could make some arguments. I think the desire, the chant here is always lighter, less expensive, right? That's the goal.
Yep.
But until we get there, you have objects and devices like the Apple Vision Pro, which are not for everybody. They are expensive.
Yep.
They are in many ways. And even Tim Cook, I think, was on the record as saying this is a developer. This is for what's next.
Yes.
And part to do that is you have to put these tools in the hands of people like us. You have to put them in the hands of creators.
So people can play with them.
And developers.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so what I'm excited about too is because I think you're right. I think there is a growing sort of like signal or trend that this is coming. And what's going to what didn't happen was on, day 2 of the launch of everyone going, this is the most, transformative technology we've ever had. It doesn't usually ever work that way anyway, right? It's the early adopters, it's the innovators who want to get their hands on it. And then it takes time to figure out how do we use these?
Right.
In which ways can you slot these things in if there isn't a just obvious application for them? And it's incredible. Even I look at just my behavior, how it's changed with using this, putting this device into my own personal ecosystem, is where I like to leverage it. One, of course, media consumption is huge. Right. It's phenomenal. I've never watched a movie in a better personalized environment.
See, but that's where we're different. So I do not like watching movies in this, apart from the immersive ones. So I can last for about 10, 15 minutes, but then it gets tedious.
Yeah.
But then I can work in it for hours.
Yeah. Oh, and I enjoy working in it as well. But I think for me, it's like I can see, I actually look, so the downside, watching with people, everyone has to have their own, right? So quickly, a family of 4 are watching this. This is a $10,000 movie.
Really fast. It's just you, and you're not even sure whether you're real in this thing.
Go away. Daddy needs to watch his movies now.
Right.
But it is interesting. I look forward to watching shows, and I will, again, where I'm still, I think this week is the final episode of Murderbot. I have only watched Murderbot inside the Vision Pro.
How interesting.
And I love it. But it's also one thing I like about, so people who are, if if you enjoy film, one of the things that's frustrating anytime is watching something from how it was filmed,
Right.
in terms of which film, which aspect ratio, and then however you have to conform it to
That's it.
your,
Yes.
you know, flat screen or whatever. I mean, you know, this goes on for ages.
Yep.
In the Vision Pro, every video is viewed at its native
Yep.
ratio, which is phenomenal.
And so I've got to say here, this was one of the big revelations. So you've had some movies come out in either IMAX format or the 4:3 format, sort of the almost square format. And I must confess, for many years, I couldn't see the point in this. To me, letterbox was where movies should be.
Just go there and do it.
But I have got to tell you, watching a 4:3 ratio movie or an IMAX ratio movie in the Apple Vision Pro is amazing.
Yeah.
There is something about that aspect ratio big in front of you that is utterly immersive.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and again, the device is expensive, but I think even if you were like, I spent $5,000 on a home movie theater system, I'm like, well, okay. But what's
For
cool-
one.
Yeah, for one. You know, if you live by yourself, then maybe, you know.
You live such a sad life, Sean.
Like I was like, go away. It's Daddy's time to watch movies. But, you know, what I like about it, though, too, is that how close. So, again, because you're in this virtualized sort of augmented space, you can be as close or as far, as big or as near.
Yep.
And the detail for me, I think what's fun is even going back and watching, you know, films I've seen, you know, countless times, being able to inspect them in a way that I haven't been able to do before because of, you know, you're sitting too far away or the screen is glossy and you're, you know, and so you lose definition, you lose detail, especially like in the shadows. But anyway, it's just, it's a fun, I mean, it's an interesting device, but also again, when I think about like, oh, I have to work on a document where I don't want people looking at what I'm doing.
Right, yes.
I'm like, there's nothing better. You don't have to put one of those sort of like dorky screens on your lap, you know?
But you sort of sometimes forget that nobody can see what you can see.
That's true.
And actually, I've got to say, it's even worse with the current operating system, which is just in beta at the moment. I've been playing with it. So now
you've got the Vision 26, right?
That's right. So now you have the option of putting these widgets on walls. And effectively, you can put windows on your walls, which look out into sort of landscapes. So if you take a panoramic photo and put it in one of these windows, it literally looks like you're looking out of the window. You move your head and the view changes. So you can surround yourself with these, and you suddenly realize when you take the headset off that something is missing. The headset environment feels more real than the environment you're actually sitting in.
This is how it starts.
I know.
This is how it starts. And the next thing you know, we'll be those guys walking around, we just can't take them off.
I know.
Like, no. Yes. Well, this wasn't intended to be the Vision Pro show, but this is
but actually there's a good segue.
For the...
No, there's a good segue here, which actually links in with last week's episode where we were talking about our favorite books. And of course, one of yours was Jurassic Park.
Yes.
And we mentioned the upcoming new movie, Jurassic World, Rebirth, which I actually went to see yesterday.
Okay, I'm dying to know about this because I've read conflicting reviews.
Yep.
I had it on my thing. I was like, oh, should I go see it this week? We'll turn this into the movie segment because I'm like, this is summertime. It's the summer blockbusters, right?
Yeah.
One, just gut reaction. How was it?
It's light entertainment for the summer. It is not a patch on the original. Not a patch.
Okay. Because what I was curious, because I've read like conflicting reviews. One was like, it brings it back to its origins. No. Okay. And the other one was, it's a dinosaur movie chasing people, but who cares?
Yeah. So if you want a fun afternoon or an evening, I mean, it's a fine movie to go and watch. I was entertained for 2 hours or so. And to be fair, they've put these little links into the original, these little homages to the original. So certainly in the first 10, 15 minutes, you can spot them sort of coming up. But they're a little heavy-handed, but it's cute.
Do they bring characters back from like whatever happened to Alan Grant?
So they actually mention Alan Grant.
Okay.
So there's that verbal connection, but no, they don't bring them back. This is really a reboot.
Okay.
But here's the challenge that I had with it. If you want to go deep, and this is partially because I've studied the original Jurassic Park. I teach from it. I've written about it. I know this film inside out.
And I would say most people are aware of the cultural impact of the film.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, you know it, you love it, even if you've never seen it.
Yep.
You know the lines.
And I can say, I mean, even though last week you were waxing lyrical about the book and sort of dissing the film a little bit, the film, as you look at it as a film, it stands the test of time incredibly well.
It does.
But it does a number of things. First of all, it's really taught storytelling in the original. This is not done for flash, not done for effects. It's done for dramatic storytelling, and it does that well. But the other thing it does well is it makes the dinosaurs real. So this isn't about big Hollywood special effects in terms of larger than life. The original is about making you feel as if these are truly a thing. This is truly science in action. And what has shifted is it's almost as if sort of some producer somewhere who hasn't really got that much depth to them has seen the original and said, dinosaurs. People watch dinosaurs. And we think that if the dinosaurs are bigger, scarier, more sci-fi, more people will watch them. So now you've had this shift in the current one from what felt real to what feels cartoonish. So the dinosaurs are no longer believable. The special effects are great. CGI is great, but this is fantasy, not scientific reality.
I think that's it. And if I did diss the movie, it wasn't intentional other than in terms of like the book is so much better. But I would agree. The original film by itself because I'm okay doing this of taking, because if you expect a film adaptation to be one for one, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
No. In fact, they never should be. A really good film adaptation brings its own feel.
That's right.
To
because
it.
Also, I mean, even just the type of storytelling with film
different.
Is you have to, because what's very, and I always worry about this with a book that takes place so much in the character's mind, because that's so hard to show visually. Right. And so in a lot of Jurassic Park, the book is exactly that. It's the fear. It's all these things. But the movie by itself, I agree. It's a standalone story. Set with the same premise. Phenomenal. And even still, it goes back. It's one of those things where it's a movie you can revisit year after year and then just enjoy it over and over again.
Right.
One of those, because you're right. One, the storytelling is incredibly tight, right? It's not really about dinosaurs.
No.
I mean, that's
absolutely not.
I mean, sorry to spoil it for you people if that's news to you. Jurassic Park isn't actually about dinosaurs.
No, it's about people and science and sort of doing things that you shouldn't do. But also, and this is something I tell my students, it's about the wonder of the natural world. And so the overarching theme and the end of the original Jurassic Park is just the sheer wonder at these amazing things in this amazing world. And I think people sometimes forget that. So now you get to a genre which is just about drama and sort of fear and horror and excitement. It's lost that. And I will pile on and I will bag also. So again, Jurassic Park is not alone in this. I am a huge fan of practical effects. Right. They stand the test of time, even if you can tell it as a special effect. Because it feels native to the film. Whereas digital or CGI effects oftentimes have hallmarks where you can spot them and they feel slightly inauthentic.
They feel like a stickers in some, especially if done poorly. It feels like someone has like a sock puppet, and it's like, well, that just doesn't do it. But so in the original Jurassic Park, I mean, also this a testament of blurring those two technologies together. I mean, the T-Rex sequence, the T-Rex where the T-Rex escapes and starts, destroying everything and whatever. That scene, from a technological perspective, was groundbreaking. In terms of what the team at ILM were able to do, because originally I believe it was they were going to do stop motion for and
I'm so glad they didn't.
Right. I mean, because even the top of the line stop motion, it looked good, but it looked like stop motion.
Right. Yes.
And so again, you have this friction or this break of distorted reality of you're like, oh, that's a clay puppet that they're moving frame at a time. But merging that new CGI model of fluid to see the muscles rippling under the skin, but then the practical effects when the T-Rex head is like, pushing in on the characters, the eyes reacting to the light. I mean, and again, bringing that level of reality to the story, just propelling it so much forward.
And if you think this was 1993, it's really hard to get your head around that.
Yeah. And again, I think too, I mean, how many times have you seen behind the scenes of a film and it's your favorite actor or whatever running from nothing on a blue background?
Right, yes.
And again, I would submit that from an actor's perspective, you get a much more authentic human experience when they have something visceral to react to, as opposed to a tennis ball on a stick and be like, pretend this is the scariest monster you've ever seen. And it's like, oh no. So that I really enjoy. But also, I will also bag on the movement, like in the original scenario, bringing back dinosaurs and then being stuck in their world. Right. Where you're confronted with the raw power of nature that you, the human by yourself, don't have that much control as a single person in this environment. You are not on the top of the food chain.
Yes.
That is scary as hell.
Right.
You don't need to add laser eyes
that's
like
exactly it.
Camouflaging.
Yes.
Like which I forget which one it was I think it was the Indominus Rex or something when they go in, they're like, where is it? And it's like, invisible. And I'm like, okay, come on. Like,
I know.
Yes. You don't need that gimmick to make it scary. What's scary is the power dynamic that as a human, you are powerless next to these creatures.
Of course, I'm with you 100%. The pushback, of course, is from the investors who say sort of, well, what's going to get people in seats? Right. Is it that sort of subtle nuance and sophistication of how we tell stories, or is it just the big special effects? And I'd love to think it's the storytelling, but really,
I know.
Some people,
well,
it's going to be the special
sells, right? It sells merchandise, and you got a cool new dinosaur figure that, I suppose. But
and I should say at the end of the day that the latest one, if you want a fun movie to go and see it.
Yeah, I'll still. Yeah. But it's can I ask this question without any spoilers? The film, does it pick up where the last one left off, the Dominion or whatever?
It's sort of, yeah. So it
gives itself space away from it?
It ties in, but it gives itself space. So it's a new storyline, but it's actually an extension of
the same world
in the past. Yeah, so it sort of goes through the past, 10, 15, 13 years, I think it is, of history. Yeah. So yes, there is that continuity there. Cool. And so they've made that effort.
Yeah. Well, that's fun. I'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
Two other movies I haven't seen. So this is, I love that this is like the Modem Futura Summer Edition. The movies Sean hasn't seen yet.
Right.
I do want to see the new Superman movie, which comes out next week, right? I think
is it? Of course, we're in July already. Yes.
And I think
this one intrigues me because you can't go 5 years without another Superman movie.
I know this. I don't know. I didn't research, but I'm like, how many reboots have there been? I think there's like 5. Yeah. Every time it's a new guy.
I know.
But I'm curious to see the new one. It looks interesting. I was never a huge DC, Superman, Batman fan. I enjoyed them, but I'm curious to see how they treat this new one.
Yes.
But the other one that I'm actually really excited to go see in IMAX is the new Formula One, the F1 movie.
Okay, yes,
starring Brad Pitt.
Apples, yes. I'm interested to ask why, because that's already getting mixed reviews even before. Actually, I guess it has launched now.
Sure, it has launched now, and I know it did well.
Yes,
financially. I want to see it for two reasons. One, I have for quite a few years now have been a quite avid Formula One fan.
Right.
And so for me, it's just kind of cool to see. It's also last year, for example, watching all the Grand Prix and things, you would see them sort of after the fact. You take note of when they were. So they actually filmed a lot of the movie during the real race weekends, during practice sessions, and even some of like the when the race is over and they do like the podium finish and stuff like that. They would do the real one, and then run out comes the movie crew and like Brad Pitt, and they get up on stage and they would just kind of piggyback on a lot of the actual race stuff. So I'm curious to see how they did that. One, also Lewis Hamilton was one of the main sort of like producers on the film, because as the 7-time world championship winner of Formula One, I mean, he has an amazing perspective.
So you should have that authenticity.
It should have that authenticity.
Yep.
The other piece is also the technology that went into this film.
Yes.
I'm really excited about that because one, of course, there was lots of the traditional sort of filmmaking techniques used, but also, so the cars, if people are not familiar with Formula One, one of the things that's cool as a fan of the sport is how much technology is just in the sport in general.
Yes.
So you have, on a normal race weekend on track, you have 20 cars going around. There's 10 teams, two cars per team. And essentially each one of these cars has multiple cameras on them. So they usually always have what's called like a halo camera, which sits just above. So you see like the driver's helmet and then the front of the car. A lot of them have a rear-facing camera.
And this is for the team.
And this is for the team and the broadcast.
Right.
So what's cool, if you subscribe to like their platform, you can also switch live to any camera you want, which is really neat.
Yep.
They also have cameras embedded in the foam of some of the driver's helmets.
Okay.
So if you really want to get the perspective of the driver, which looks terrifying, by the way, because you've got this pillar in the way and everything's bouncing and they're going like 230 miles an hour around a car. Anyway, but one of the things that they had to do for the movie to capture some of the cinematics is they completely reconstructed a camera. They basically built it. Apple's team essentially built a custom camera out of parts, essentially, to put it in one of the pylons of the car. Okay. So they were given like this pylon, because these cars are very strict. It's like, down to the ounce, right? They had these, and so they're like, you have this like aerodynamic pylon that weighs, I don't know, I'm just making up a weight. It weighs like half a pound.
Right.
If you can make a camera that fits in there and nothing changes,
you got to take something else out. Yes.
Yeah. And they did it. And so some of the sequences were filmed using those cameras, these special cameras. So I'm always excited about it from that perspective too.
But also, I just talking about the technology.
Yeah.
So this is one where, again, going back to the Apple Vision Pro, you've got this sort of lap with Brad Pitt in full spatial video.
Yep.
So you can feel as if you are literally in the car. And this is an experience where it's almost impossible to describe. You have to put the Vision Pro on to feel it.
Yeah. And I would, the best way I could describe it is if you've ever spun around enough times where your stomach feels like it's about to
that's how you felt.
Well, and I think, so for me too, and again, I'll tie into the other piece here. A reason why I'm interested is the technology, the story. Well, I'm actually the least interested in the actual story. But it's the technology, but also the authenticity. So apparently so Brad Pitt, for example, I think had, for months had been practicing and learning, going through driving school to learn, because driving on a racetrack and driving one of these cars is not the same.
Phoenix, not quite the same.
As much as,
actually looking at some of the drivers,
as much as other drivers I think it is, right? It's not.
Yeah.
And of course they're not driving they're driving a Formula 2 car that's in a Formula 1 body, because a Formula 1 car,
little nuances here.
Well, and to put it into perspective, how difficult those cars are to drive, they're almost like, for a normal driver to get into one, you probably can't even get it going, because it's so sensitive that the anti-stall kicks in and it'll just shut the car off.
Right.
But so the Vision, the immersive experience you're talking about that's on the Vision Pro is so cool. So they mounted for a special lap. It's around, I think it's the Abu Dhabi track.
It is where, sort of little aside, I have actually had a dinner on that track.
Oh, no way.
And stayed in that hotel that oversees the track.
Well, that's really cool. Presumably not during a Formula 1 race.
Not during a Formula 1 race. No. But we had a banquet actually on the track. There weren't races when I was there. But
how cool.
I know.
So and I know the track because, no surprise. If it was a surprise, I'm a little bit of a dork, whatever. But I used to do a lot of e-sim racing with Formula 1 and stuff like that. So I have like the whole like wheels and
you know
to pretend, right? So I know the track.
Yes.
But it was really fun to watch him go around. Also, and the whole time, anytime there's these immersive things, the other thing I'm doing the entire time, because it's beautiful. You can look, it's about 180 degrees ish.
Right. Yes.
I'm always. I'm trying to find the camera.
Okay, so this is why you have motion sickness, because you're not
looking
actually
at the
focusing
camera.
Right?
I was looking at the camera though.
You're supposed to just look straight ahead.
I'm like, I can see Brad Pitt's eye if I look over this way. And then I'm looking this way. I'm like, oh, look, there's the camera. And the whole time I'm like, this lap is going long. But it's incredibly cool because also you can feel the speed.
Yes.
Oh, anytime you get lower down to the ground, you feel that speed, which is why, as a kid, you ride like a little go-kart and it feels like you're going so fast. And in reality, it's like, but yeah, I mean, it was incredibly cool to see, but also, again, just from a technological perspective, I'm curious if they were using like the black magic, immersive camera, or if they were using, I'm always like, what else have they Frankenstein together out of these bits and pieces? But it's incredibly cool to see. And also just that authenticity of of an actor driving that track.
Right.
And then, of course, when things are on IMAX, that's kind of the pinnacle of cinema experience when it needs to be big, loud, whatever.
Okay,
so as long as
you've convinced me. I need to go and see this. Yeah.
We should go see it. We'll go to IMAX. But that's one of the films I really want to see, because it'll be awesome when it eventually comes out on streaming and we can see it in the Vision Pro.
But you won't get the same experience.
But it won't be, because and again, if people have never experienced an IMAX, it's worth seeing something in IMAX.
I agree, yes.
Because especially if it's like the proper, not the digital IMAX, but the proper film. I don't know how big the screen is. It's like
they're big.
100 feet or something. You have to look from top to bottom practically.
Yep.
It's incredible.
Yep.
Absolutely incredible.
Yep.
So,
okay. So another one on your bucket list for the summer.
So by the next episode, we'll see, have I seen these?
Yes.
I'm supposed to shout out to my friend Justin. He got us tickets to see Superman early.
Okay.
So, but next time I can get a reaction review on the next one. Andrew, I did want to ask you, moving away from movie, unless you got any other movies.
No.
So was it WEF last week?
It was.
Oh my
yes.
God! Suddenly it was like, is that 3 weeks ago?
Here is the segue between the F1 movie and World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
So that dinner that I was at on the Formula One track was a World Economic Forum meeting.
Oh, cool!
In Abu Dhabi many years ago. But actually, it was a meeting where I was part of the group that were putting together the WEF's Top 10 Emerging Technologies.
Yep.
And of course, last week I was in China at the World Economic Forum annual meeting. They call it the annual meeting of new champions.
Yep.
In China, we were talking about this, launching that series. So that's the connection between the F1 movie and where I was last week.
We can come up with anything. That's the best thing. It's like Formula One, and we drive to WEF.
And of course, this was a really interesting meeting because
it was Summer Davos, right?
Summer Davos. So it's effectively sort of what WEF do, where they have their big Davos meeting in January in Switzerland, where you have the sort of the world sort of movers and shakers and leaders there. And then they have this summer one in Asia, which is really focused on what's happening in Asia and China in particular. So quite an incredible meeting where you have a lot of world leaders there, as well as sort of big companies, but it definitely has an Asian sort of vibe to it, an Asian focus, which means you get a unique perspective on what's happening in that part of the world. Yeah,
because it's not like nothing's happening.
A lot is happening.
A lot. And I feel, I think that is something, and I feel like, I'll give ourselves a compliment. I think we do a good job of this, but not everybody does, is when we're talking about innovations and emerging technologies, is looking at it from a global perspective, right? But yeah, I thought that was, and it was really fun last week. God, it was just last week.
I know.
It feels so long ago by comparison. It's summertime. Every day, what is it? A day is a week is a month, and
too much time by the pool, Sean.
Yeah, I got too many. It's because I've got so many layers on. I'm suffering from heat. But no, I thought it was so. One, it was really fun that we got to sort of launch. And if you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to the podcast episode we did, which was super fun because we recorded it ahead of time. We were under an embargo. And we got to, when the embargo was lifted, it was like, go.
Within minutes of that press conference, yes.
And also a slight panic on my end when I realized CST was China Standard Time and not Central Standard Time. Yes. And I was like, wait a second, how can you have two CSTs in the world? This is confusing.
So for listeners, the sort of the text exchange was me saying, Sean, it looks like this is going out several hours late. And Sean said, no, I put it right. And me saying, I'm standing here in China and this doesn't look right.
I'm like, Central Standard Time, man, it is ready to go. And then I'm like, wait a minute, is this? And then what the giveaway was the European time, CET, was 4:15 or something. Yeah. And I looked at that, I was like, 4:15 in the afternoon is the same as 10:15 in Central Standard Time or whatever. Like, that makes perfect sense. And then I was like, but wait a minute. In European time, they use the 24-hour clock, not the 12-hour clock. And so I was like, 4 o'clock would be 1600, not 4. And I was like, that's the wrong time zone.
I'm sure nobody else has had problems with time zones. It's just us.
I'm just saying, I think we can't have two time zones with the same abbreviation. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that was tremendously cool. It was neat to see, of course, all those technologies drop, and you can go back to our podcast. We've got them, they're on YouTube. We even chunked them up into little clips. But again, I thought when I watched it and listened to it, and then was kind of watching all the different things bubble out through LinkedIn or other social media platforms from that event. It was super exciting to see this level of innovation.
Yep.
But also, we poked fun at it a lot that it was like AI was missing from a lot of this stuff.
Right.
But what made me think about this, often people will ask when under the context of futures work, or like how do you stay ahead of the curve? Looking at what is hot right now isn't how you do that.
That's it. You look over the horizon or as close to the horizon as you can get.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. And a lot of times it doesn't mean you discount the things that are happening, right? That's part of it. But you start looking and go like, okay, well, what's the next? What are those things that are starting to essentially bubble up that are starting to be more than just a single signal of something cool? Right. That it's like this thing, now this thing, and then you start to have this frequency start to pop. And again, coming back to the methodology that I really enjoyed again, and I think for people who are interested in studying futures, I think besides the actual the briefings on all the 10 technologies, honestly, spend some time on that methodology,
right?
Because I think that is such a powerful toolkit for people who are wanting to engage in futures.
I think you're right. Yes, yes,
because it gives you this understanding of how to start to. And then again, this is an entire process of how do you make sense of the noise,
right?
Because there's a lot of it out there.
Yes.
And how do you cut through hype? How do you cut through people pushing? And when I say people, this could be entire countries, organizations, whatever, pushing their own agenda versus things that are truly innovative or transformative.
That's it. So it's that ability to see somewhat through the noise, which becomes incredibly important. And I would say, so just think about AI for a second. So yes, the top 10 emerging technologies, AI was conspicuous by its apparent absence. But at the WEF meeting, AI was front and center.
Sure.
But, and this is what really struck me, it wasn't the hype of AI. This was really deep.
Oh, that's good.
Stuff.
That's refreshing.
Yes. But also very revealing from a US perspective, because of course, China dominated this. We actually had the Chinese premier opening the meeting.
Oh, interesting.
Just to show how big this is. And there were two or three things that threaded through the conversation for the week. One was just how disruptive the launch of DeepSeek was earlier this year.
Sure.
And I'd sort of forgotten about this.
People remember that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But in China, this was a huge deal.
Oh, I bet.
Because it demonstrated that a Chinese company could develop Chinese technology that, yes, it drew on OpenAI's work, but it effectively trounced what was happening in the US.
Yeah.
And in China, they see this as a very clear signal that China is now getting to the point where they're catching up with the US, and their trajectory is such that they're set to exceed what we're doing.
Yeah.
Not through the hype, but just looking at the very practical development of these technologies and their use. So that was very clearly there. The other message that came through very clearly was that China in particular has a strategy here. It's a national strategy, which is not about hype. So one of the things that was clear is nobody was talking about AGI or superintelligence or existential threat.
Okay.
They were talking about how over the next 5 to 10 years, China leverages the current and emerging models around AI to ensure their economic positioning within the world and their geopolitical positioning. And they look at the US at the moment, and you could palpably feel this sense that they saw the US self-destructing and China seeing this as an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, that's very telling. Wow.
Yep.
That's sort of like, you should, sit up straight and take notice.
Yeah, and of course there's a little bit of hubris here.
Sure.
And you've got the messaging that comes out from China. This is what they want people to believe, and yet the evidence is beginning to come up here. There was an excitement here on how you could avoid getting wrapped up in the hype, but you could develop and propagate really solid tools that gave Chinese companies, Chinese institutions a really clear advantage in the world stage or on the world stage.
Yeah.
And of course, the challenge then is is the US going to sort of keep pace with this? And the thing that I think is on top of a lot of people's minds with AI is that competitive advantage is measured in months, not in years or decades now.
That's
so if you can keep one step ahead over a period of months, that gives you the first mover advantage.
And that's insane.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that it has shrunk to that level of almost like, I mean, it is almost, at what point does it become daily? Right? Where it's
I know. Yes.
You know,
Yep.
So it's crazy. And I think in some ways that echoes a lot of the frustrations that I know a lot of people who work sort of seriously in the space of AI are feeling, or in terms of technologies, is so much energy is wasted on the hype and the hyperbole and the snake oil sales pitches that are trying to goose stock, valuations and all this kind of crap. But one thing that was making me think about, and I was listening to a podcast, so I was trying to look up real quick if I could find the name of the website. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and there was a guest, John Graham Cumming, who was originally from Cloudflare. So he's done a whole bunch of cool stuff in the past, and he was talking about this website he created, which is essentially, and he used this term that was like low background steel or something to that nature. Let me see if I can find this.
Steel as in take rather than steel as in the stuff.
Steel as in the metal.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I was like, well, that's an interesting name. And then I'll look it up so I can get the right link. But what was interesting about it, he was like, the question was, why that name? And he was referring to, and this always just piqued my interest in terms of just the science of prior to, or I should say, post essentially World War II and the testing of nuclear weapons, all of the steel has very low levels of radiation in it. Okay. Sort of globally.
Yep.
And so if you want steel that doesn't get, so of course, if you think about, if you need to do something in a very sensitive environment, right, where you can't have radioactive interference or something, how do you get metal or steel that doesn't have that?
Yep.
The only steel on the planet that wasn't sort of radiated was from shipwrecks that happened that are laying on the bottom of the sea floor.
Interesting.
Prior to, essentially all the big, New Mexico nuclear bomb testing and whatever.
Tests. Yes. Yeah.
So apparently there's entire companies that do this. They go down, raise shipwrecks, reclaim the steel to then be used.
How interesting. I hadn't heard this.
Yeah. And so first of all, I'm like, okay, this is cool. But also the whole point of this, his website experience is like the way that if you look across the human activity, there's a line, which below that line was steel that's not radiated. Above that line is all the steel is radiated to a certain, non-dangerous level, but still there. And comparing that to today's sort of level of artificial intelligence. Right. So if you draw that line at around like the launch of ChatGPT 3, whatever. So like November 2022 or something, that after that line, we can't tell. Everything is in some way contaminated, if you will.
Yes.
With artificial intelligence, even if it's not, how do you tell?
Right.
Yes. And then before that fold, right, that was the line in human history where things weren't, for the most part, didn't have generative AI capabilities and things like that. And it just made me think about that for a bit, which I thought was an interesting way of thinking about sort of this ethnographic, like there is this line, right? Where in like archive.org, for example, you can go back.
Everything changed,
prior to these things, and you can see all this stuff. And then there's this line. And from that point forward, I don't know if we'll ever be able to say is.
And so the really interesting thing here is, I'm sure some people who are listening will think, this is only in some countries. There are many, many people who don't have internet, many economies that really don't have access to AI. So surely this is a very privileged Western perspective. I don't think it is, because AI is changing the world in almost unfathomable ways. So even if you don't have an internet connection, even if you're not using AI use is still affecting the life you live and the environment you live in. And I think that is the profound step change. And
I did my due diligence. It's called low background steel. Pre-AI.
Low background steel.
And Yeah, I mean, it looks basically, it's just a Tumblr. So,
Right.
But it's interesting. And
Is Tumblr still going?
apparently, according to this, it is. I don't. That's changed. Speak about it's like Superman reboots of
Right.
of web platforms. But yeah, no, but it was. I think that that left me thinking about this morning as I was coming into campus. I'm like, that is one of those markers on human history.
Yes.
That
and this is where you see it infusing sort of through everything. So yes, going back to this meeting with all of these primarily Asian economies coming together with China being there, you can see how it's affecting everything in terms of policy, in terms of strategy, in terms of investment, in terms of how people are thinking about how you thrive in the coming AI sort of era, which is effectively upon us. Yeah. And of course, with China, you need to talk about velocity. So, and of course, velocity is speed with direction. So I've been working in emerging technologies, 25 plus years now. And the mantra has always been China is behind. Yeah. Yep. China doesn't have the technical capability. China doesn't have the understanding. China can only mimic what the West does. China is basically sort of flooding the market with sort of false research. China is maybe doing smart stuff, but they're not as good as ours. But there's been a trajectory, and people are now beginning to realize that scientists in China are actually pretty good. And they're going so fast that if you follow that trajectory forward, Chinese technology is actually poised to exceed a lot of what we're doing outside China.
Yeah. I mean, and what's interesting, one is a rumor I can share.
Yep.
If people have been following in the news, there's a lot of kerfuffle over Mark Zuckerberg going out, opening up his personal checkbook and going after researchers at OpenAI with the rumor is that there's like 100 million.
So I saw a great post on that, by the way, and saying that sort of Zuckerberg is so confident about AGI that he's having to spend all these millions on humans.
Well, yes. Also, they spent how much money to rebrand from Facebook to Meta. But anyway,
I know, yes.
But I think all those top scientists, I believe the ones that they weren't mentioning like their entire names, but everyone in the industry, I think, know who they are. Yep. They were all Chinese scientists.
They were, yes.
Second is the increasing influence of the Chinese EV market.
Yes.
Those cars.
Which is massive. And we don't see that in the US, but the rest of the world.
Yep. You look around because, the US has been dominated in the EV space with things like Tesla and, traditional makers like Ford and Chevy who have done EV models. There's a lot of them out there. I'm not listing half of them. But we don't have the Chinese automakers here.
Right.
And when you start going and look, because I think also historically that was like, those aren't cars we want here. But now you look at them and you see some of the reviews that people are doing.
Pretty good.
And you're like, well, wait a minute, I want that.
Right, I know.
You're like, that's got everything and more than this one has, and it's cheaper.
And the quality.
And that's what I mean. The quality is they're like luxury.
Yep.
And you're just like, whoa.
And this gets back to the point I was making with China. So you've had this narrative. The narrative has been wrong.
Yeah.
It's been people with their heads stuck in a bucket that are making up these stories about how China is inferior when actually it hasn't been.
I mean, it's incredible to see what, again, even just looking at the output of the technology, and you're like, it's amazing.
Yep.
One of those things. And then, all right, so I've got one last thing. I'll bring us all the way back to the beginning, and then we can probably wrap up.
Yes, I think we should. Yes. On this mega cold open that isn't really a cold open.
I know. We're like, the behind the scenes here is Andrew and I always go, we'll just do a real quick short one for the summer. And I'm looking at our timer and it's already like 45 minutes or something. So, but also because I had mentioned this, so I want to come back to the immersive environment stuff. Because also I had, I'll put it this way. Another signal that there's movement here is also from the video game industry.
Right.
So one thing that Xbox has been, Xbox owned by Microsoft, big console, the Xbox and the Xbox 360 and all this kind of stuff has a long history of being part of the console wars.
Yep.
They recently have started moving, I think, in a very interesting way to this idea of gaming as a service. So cloud-based gaming, but they're moving. They've struck a deal with, for example, with Meta, and so now you can play your Xbox games in your Meta Quest.
Okay, yes.
And for me, so I've also been trying to hook this thing up to my Apple Vision Pro, by the way. Right. But I'm like, again, this is another signal that is also very compelling in this immersive space of finding different things, whether it be productivity, so you creating and working on documents and whatever, entertainment, movies, and like interactive entertainment, like gaming, moving those into these spaces, but not always in the frame that they don't always have to be this virtual like VR experience, but that you're having these sort of virtualized environments inside this headset doing non-VR things.
Okay.
Right? So if you think about that, right, you're in a virtualized environment, but the window you're working on is still 2D or traditional, just like we do with like the Vision Pro and you pull your desktop up or something. And I think that is a space which, again, coming back to the Vision Pro and kind of where we kind of started, is getting really excited about where some of this technology is going is, again, having that ability to have that personalized that digital environment. And then once we can, again, say it with me, people, cheaper and lighter, faster. But once that starts to really move down that pathway in terms of getting the tech there, and I'm curious to see, tying it into China, of what will, because we haven't seen much coming from them yet in that space. And I'm curious over the next, 3 to 5 years or so to see kind of what comes out of that space. Because again, a lot of the roadmaps for that technology is happening there. Right. I mean, that's where these things are being built. That's where the foundries are. That's where,
it. Yes.
So the technology is literally being assembled and constructed and fabbed there.
Yes.
So I'm really curious to see where this goes. Cause I mean, I think what we all want is a pair of like sunglass-like objects that allow us to take that environment, that persistence with us.
Right. That's
what I want.
And of course, the next step on from that, and we talked about how isolating this is. You put your headset on and it's just you and your environment.
The way it's meant to be.
For you, maybe. But we're now beginning to look, if you say you take a 10-year horizon over these immersive environments, we're now beginning to look at the possibility of inviting other people into that environment.
Yes.
So now it's a shared environment. Whether that's sort of this extended reality where you have an overlay on reality, or whether you're actually fully immersive, but you bring other virtual characters in. So I think if this works, we're going to go from being social to being isolated back to being social again in these enhanced environments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add one last, I'll throw one last little speculative thing in there for people to dream about, which is that technology is exciting because it also starts to lead towards, again, the velocity of advancements in this idea of having a connected space. So if you think about like a traditional building, like we in education, a lot of times we'll use a school as an example, right? A lot of times you use a school, you go there, it's in some ways, unfortunately, it's seen as transactional. You go there to learn, you walk out, but also schools can represent so much more community and things. But what if a school or a building were able to adapt to you, right? And so with this environment, you bring, your environment with you, but then the connection of that with distributed sensing networks and all these kind of things, the building can start to interact with you in your sort of personalized digital ecosystem bubble, whatever reality that you bring with you. That allows for humans and digital things.
We're getting back to cube farms, apart from the fact that every cube farm, as soon as you put your glasses on, has got your own personal overlay.
Well, maybe that's the reality. We're all just going to end up in these little pods and just go freedom,
right, with the glasses on.
Yes. So maybe dream of it, nightmare. It depends on your philosophical bent, I suppose.
But we could be heading that way, and of course, that's when we trip into sci-fi with Ready Player One type vibes and stuff like that. Yes.
Also, and I didn't put that book on my list, but that's a fun summer read.
Yeah. We ought to have a talk about that because I do not like the book and I do like the movie.
I didn't care for the movie.
I'm an outlier probably there.
Yeah. For me, I will say this, and the book. I think a lot of people have criticized the book in terms of its actual writing. But for me, it was such a nostalgia trip. That was what was so fun.
That was the world you grew up in.
It was so fun.
But we ought to stop here because otherwise we're going to start all over again.
And now we begin part 2. No, this has been fantastic. Andrew, thank you so much. Absolute joy to be able to come in here on a summer. And I feel like the temperature cooled down a little bit.
You think?
Or I just,
So
I'm
just acclimatized.
I'm so
yes.
dehydrated, I can't sweat anymore, and I need to go.
Yeah, we probably ought to wrap up to sort of deal with your fluid intake. So until next time.
Until next time. And just a quick shout out too, if you are enjoying our podcast, please subscribe and leave us a rating and review if you would. It helps us get discovered.
And tell a friend.
And tell a friend. Bring a friend with you, and you guys can argue about which books are on. Or do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever. But we'll see you on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you there.
Demodulating signal.
Modem Futura is a production of the Future of Being Human initiative at Arizona State University. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. To learn more about the Future of Being Human initiative and all of our other projects, please visit us on the web at futureofbeinghuman.asu.edu.
End transmission.